G'day, welcome one and all to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. This time we are going to be taking another look at a older Hero of the Month, specifically the 5-star legendary green heroine, Natalia, the Cunning Combat Tactician. Now, Natalia, or Nat as I may refer to her, was first introduced to the game as the featured Hero of the Month in January of 2021. Now, however, she's only available for summons during the Manor of Legends portal, which comes around every 4 weeks. This portal, though, has some pretty horrendous odds to summon any particular hero, particularly when they are not the featured hero, because they're just part of a growing crowd of old Heroes of the Month. When they are featured, the odds are a little bit better, but still really low. And unfortunately for Nat, she's not actually going to be featured again. This current month of January 2024 is the final month that her featuring in the portal. Unless, of course, they change up how they do the featured heroes, but this is her second appearance. So yeah, anyway, switching over to my roster real quick, and we can take a look at her artwork. So there's not too much that I've really got to highlight in the artwork. It is it's probably one of the more normal artworks, I guess you can say, for a military tactician. Obviously going for sort of like I don't know, like an Eastern European or Eastern European sort of vibe. With some of that gear there, but yeah, I don't know, there's not too much to say, so pause the video, have a look more if you'd like, but we'll carry back on with the review. So being a past or a Hero of the Month, Natalia actually has no family bonus at the time of this review. Maybe SGG will add one down the track to all the old Heroes of the Months, but at this stage there is nothing. In terms of her personal stats, so Natalia has 721 attack, 630 defense, and 1457 HP. It is worth stating that her power or her total stat line is actually quite low. This is mostly a result of her being quite an old hero and the degree of power creep that's happened since then. However, for her time, there is obviously a skewing from her defense towards her attack stats. Her HP is also a little bit inflated for the time. But yeah, that's sort of where her stat line is at. So her charge speed is set to 34, which is slow. This is actually the slowest bracket of charge in the game, requiring 13 tiles to charge or 7 ghosted tiles. Speed break needs just +2 up to 36 charge, which is very easily possible using the Relic Hunter Bargo weapon, which gives you +6 at maximum promotion. Alternatively, for Nat, because of her speed, you can actually get that +2 speed effectively using the 2% class node, which is at +19 on her class tree. A speed break, or a double speed break, sorry, requires +9, which isn't actually possible at this stage because green has a chronic lack of speed guns. There is only the +6 Relic Hunter Bargo, there's no other options. So yeah, you need to get to at least like +7 or +8 for even the class node to be kicking in, so no double speed break. Class-wise, Nat is a member of the Sentry class, which is giving her the chance to armor up and gain 5% armor after receiving any damage. I actually don't mind this perk, as the damage itself can come from any source. It can come from minions, tiles, skill damage, DOT, support attacks, you name it. If there's damage involved, it can proc the Sentry class perk. The biggest downside is, though, that it only can proc 1 time per turn. So it doesn't matter how many instances of damage you take, there is going to only ever be 1 chance at the 5% armor. Which is a little bit of a downer. Personally, in terms of a class tree, I personally wouldn't assign any emblems onto Natalia unless you absolutely have no possible other green options to assign emblems to. She's just not a great hero, and we'll get into that in a little more detail. If you do have to put emblems on her, I would go an attack pathway just to try to bolster her damage output. Her defense and her HP, it's so far behind that it's probably not going to make much of a difference, but if you can boost that attack output, then it might make her a little bit usable. Yeah, so having a look at that on another hero, I'm going to use Shocker because I obviously haven't leveled my copy of Natalia. So we'll pull up that talent tree and then we'll open up my drawing tool. So if you are going to do that on a tree, I'd probably go, well, may as well improve a defense, seeing as our HP is already a little bit up there. So we'd go pick the attack, defense, attack again. Here I would definitely go the attack and HP route. The healing node does jack all. It's not worth getting. I'd pick up the attack, and then we'd go attack and defense at the end there. So that's kind of what it would look like in terms of a class tree. The node 19 down the bottom here, that speed node is actually worth getting if you do push her that far, but that is a lot of emblems to commit to her. So obviously not going to promote doing it that far down, so we'd come right at the very end of it there. Alright, I'll delete that. Cool, so heading back over to the portal, and we'll take a look at her special skill. So her special skill is titled Heroic Defense, and at level 10 skill and 34 charge speed will deal 170 damage to all enemies. This damage is increased by 13% per each dead ally. The caster then gains plus 100 defense for 3 turns and regenerates 342 HP over 3 turns, so 114 health per turn. So breaking that apart a little bit, we may as well start with the damage because it's the first item on her special skill. So damage is very hard to quantify and standardize across all the heroes just because it relies on so many different variables. You've got defense, RNG, and all these other things that play into it. However, a metric that can be used as an approximation for grading all of these heroes and comparing them is attack power. So attack power is just a hero's attack stat multiplied by the percentage on their special skill. This feeds into the damage calculation, and it does propagate out, so higher attack power will result in higher damage. To then normalize it against different charge speeds, so obviously Natalia here is quite slow, you then divide the attack power by the number of tiles to get the attack power per tile, which is a normalized method of calculating or comparing damage output. So in the case of Nat here, Nat does 712 attack, 170% damage, which comes out at an attack power of 1210 on each enemy. If you divide that by the 13 tiles required to charge her, that comes out an attack power per tile of 93 per enemy. Pardon me. So if we have a look at Nat compared to some other DOA 5 heroes in green, there are a couple of other options. So Nat comes in way down the bottom, coming in second last. She is technically the worst of them. The only reason that Mantis is worse, quote unquote, is because Mantis, to get to the DOA 3, actually needs to charge 3 times. However, if you just take Mantis's damage output on 8 tiles, he's actually quite a bit higher up there. He comes out at 277 attack power per tile, which is easily the best in that list. However, it is the third cast, which is why he's further down there. So some other options in there, you've got Mortis. So Mortis comes out at 110 attack power per tile with the chance to crit. You've got Grunt at 112 with bleed damage, and you've got Jack all the way up the top there at 186. Nat, even if she's got 2 dead allies, only comes in at 107, which bumps her up 1 rank. If she comes in with 4 dead allies, it comes in at 112 attack power per tile. So still quite a step behind Jack and Royden when he's hitting armor, but does get bolstered a little bit. So overall, not really a great hitter. This is even more accentuated by the fact that green doesn't have any DOA 5 defense debuffers. There's nothing. There's no elemental defense down, there's no regular defense down, so there's nothing to actually further improve her damage output. And that's also not even mentioning the fact that any improvement to her damage to build her up higher in that list, it's tied to your allies dying. So even then, with your allies dead, you're running a higher chance of losing the fight, but her damage output is also not that huge that it's going to, you know, win you the battle or give you a huge victory or anything like that. So part of this damage output problem is due to her age. She does have low stats and she does have low percentage in her skill, but even when she was first released, her speed was just really slow compared to a lot of the other options. So I mean, by way of comparison, there's a newer hero that's been added to the game who gets increased damage for ally deaths, which is Gladius. Gladius gets 13% extra, but his is tied to either enemies or allies, so he can get up to 8 extra instances of damage coming out at bonus 104% damage. Natalia, on the other hand, gets at most 52%. Admittedly, Gladius only goes to one enemy, whereas Natalia goes to all enemies, but Gladius is also considerably faster. But we'll get into some more comparisons later on, because Gladius is the most direct comparison for Nat. So moving on from the damage, the second line of her skill is a increase in defense. Unfortunately, this doesn't really lend too much improvement because it's a static defense buff at only plus 100, which is literally a 16% improvement on her defense. Gladius, on the other hand, gets a minimum of 36% defense improvement and will scale up to a maximum of 56% defense improvement. So we're not even half of what Gladius gets in terms of a defense buff. Finally, there's the self-heal over time for 342 HP for 3 turns. This does sort of work towards helping her stay alive to cast a second time or even outlast her allies. It's not groundbreaking. 342 HP is only 24%, so less than a quarter of her base health stat. This is, for reference, the same heal over time that Throttle does to the full team, but Throttle does it at 11 tiles, whereas Nat's doing it at 13 tiles to herself and nearby. So again, if we compare Nat to Gladius, Gladius gains 570 armor over 3 turns, which is almost 200% improvement over what Nat does. So overall, Nat just isn't a good hero. She wasn't an attractive option when she was first released, and then power creep and more recent heroes have sort of left her further and further and further behind. And this recent edition of Gladius has really highlighted what a hero like this could have been and how it should have been done. For this sort of hero to work, one that is a heroic defense or a last stand kind of hero, they really need a lot in their skill and their stats to sort of make them be the last one standing. Nat just doesn't have good enough defense stat. Her HP, it's bulky, but it's not anything compared to the current heroes. And then her special skill, it doesn't really lend to surviving further into the fight to be that last hero standing, like Gladius does. She gets a minor improvement in her defense, and she gets a small health regeneration, compared to Gladius, who gets a massive improvement in his defense and a massive armor generation over time as well. So, you know, unfortunately, Nat just isn't what she could be, which is just demonstrated by Gladius. So for Natalia's grading, I am going to grade her. So on a war and raid attack, I'm just going to give her a D+. She's just not good. There's not enough in her skill that will really make her an attractive hero to pull out on defense in attack situations, and her damage output isn't high enough to warrant her speed. For War Machines, I'm also going to give her a D+. Again, she's not actually contributing much. Her attack stat is a little bit elevated, but it's not anything compared to more modern heroes. Eventing a D, she's too slow to really be of much use there, and again, her damage output isn't going to help you hugely in those event situations. War and Raid Defense, I'm going to give her a D. Again, it is situational damage. It's not even and even when it is triggered, it's not going to win you the raid. So she's not worth putting in a defense team. If you do put her in a defense team, you'd be best putting her in a wing, where she can be potentially that last hero standing on the defense team. Moving on to the tournament format, so in Bloody Battle tournaments, I'm going to give her a D for attack and a D- for defense. That's because she loses the self-heal, which is a big component to her even having a chance at staying alive. For buff boosters, a D+ and a D. She does give herself 2 buffs, which will increase her damage output, but not massively. Charge attack is where she gets the biggest improvement in her grading, so she goes up to a B- on attack and a C+ on defense. It's still not pushing her all the way up into those upper thresholds, because even at those faster speeds, her damage is only 170% unless her allies are dying. So it's not a great way of putting her into a team to rely on damage from your heroes dying. So overall, that grading comes in at a D+ for attack and a D+ for defense. So that concludes the content that I have for this review of Natalia. I apologize, it is a bit of a negative one, but as always, this is just my personal opinion. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback on some of these heroes, so please jump down into the comments section of this video, drop me a note. I do love reading them, and I always try to reply to as many as I possibly can. If you enjoyed this video and others like it and found it to be useful, like the video, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, but most importantly, share it around, because chances are, if you found this video and the content to be useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful for other players that you play with also. So thank you once again for joining me for this review. I do hope I will see you soon, but until then, stay safe and happy gaming. Cheers, bye.